Like many of you, I grew up playing bright and colorful Nintendo games and happy-go-lucky kid games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. Or maybe, just so this video is a little more relatable to you youngins, just pretend I grew up playing Minecraft or Roblox or Fortnite. Essentially, games made for all age groups. And the game I'll be talking about today is more or less no different. Except for one thing. It taught me the concepts of existential dread and nihilism. That game is Ragnarok Online. For those who haven't heard of RO, it's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game created by Korean developer and publisher Gravity, based on a Korean comic or manhwa, also titled Ragnarok, written by Lee Myung-jin. It was originally released in South Korea on August 31st, 2002 for Microsoft Windows, while the international version was later released the following year on June 1st, 2003. In RO, you play as an anime-styled 2D sprite on a 3D background. The character customization is somewhat limited, initially only allowing you to alter your hairstyle and color, though you get hats later in the game, and you can sort of select what clothes you'll be wearing later in the game depending on what job class you pick. The original game consisted of 13 different second job classes, which you could choose from after selecting one of the 7 different first job classes, somewhat early on in the game. Swordsman, Magician, Merchant, Thief, Archer, Alkalite, or Super Novice. I always picked Magician because I had this huge fascination with magic spells and wizardry when I was younger. Probably because of Harry Potter and the 1998 Master Magician Lance Burton instructional VHS tape.
To make the salt reappear, you just reach up in the air, you pop the thumb tip off like that, you pour it out, and that's the salt trick.
Ragnarok Online came out before in-game cash shops were a thing. There weren't many MMOs in general out yet, and companies were still trying to figure out how to make money off of the things. RuneScape had successfully launched with both a free version of the game for everyone and a members-only version that you could pay a monthly subscription for, but everyone was playing RuneScape. They could afford to keep those free servers up and running just using the revenue of the players that actually were paying for the premium service. Other game companies like Gravity couldn't afford to do this, so everyone had to pay a monthly subscription if they wanted to play on the official servers. I say official servers specifically because there were a ton of questionably legal private servers for the game that you could play for free. Because I was just a kid at the time and didn't have unlimited access to my parents' credit cards, I played on a private server. Since RO is an MMO, while you're playing it, you'll occasionally see other players wandering around with all these cool outfits and passive spells and buffs and decorations and whatnot. Sometimes you'd even see game masters or GMs, that is, moderators from the team behind the private server. These godlike figures that could mute players, kick players from the game, basically do whatever they want since they're the ones in control. Players used to love hanging out in the middle of the game's central hub, Prontera, spamming some of the flashiest spells in the game, I think just because they looked cool. Different private servers had different rates at which you could gain experience points and level up. I guess the server I was playing on had somewhat low rates, because I remember thinking it was going to take forever for me to get anywhere near the levels of these guys that I would see hanging out in Prontera. This is when I got to thinking, why are the EXP rates so low? Would I be better off playing on another server with faster rates? There are so many servers to choose from. How do I decide on one? And if I do manage to pick one, my friends are already playing on this one. How do I convince them to switch? Then it dawned on me. How are there so many private servers? There are so many of them. They must not be that difficult to host, right? Well, turns out I was right. I did some research, and making your own private server didn't look that bad. You just download a few .bat files off some sketchy third-party website, edit the INI files that come with them, execute them in a particular order, and bam, your own private server is up and running. Of course, it's a little more effort to get that server connected to the internet. You had to go into your router settings and forward some ports. But I was a somewhat techie kid, and I had already familiarized myself with port forwarding thanks to torrents. So I somehow managed to get all that working as a dumb 10-year-old kid. And once I did, a whole new world had opened up for me. You know those INI files I mentioned earlier? Well, depending on how you edit them, not only could you set up the server EXP rates however you wanted them, you could change basically anything about the game if you knew where to look. You could create as many characters as you want, give them any skill set, make them any level, teleport them anywhere in the game at any time. As a game master, you really were the god of your own little world. But the funny thing about being a god is, if you've gotten to the point where you can do literally anything, do you have a reason left to do anything? Sure, I could make my friends GMs too, and we could now fight the strongest monsters in the game with ease. But why bother? We wouldn't gain any EXP from it, our levels were already maxed out. We wouldn't gain any new skills or abilities or items that we couldn't already get otherwise. We wouldn't gain access to any place new we couldn't already teleport to. Basically, all that was left to do was just hang out. And if all you're gonna do is hang out and not bother training or exploring or anything, why bother booting up the game in the first place? I stopped playing Ragnarok for a while after this. I just found it boring after that. A similar thing would happen to me a few years later with another one of my favorite games, Pokemon. I had been messing around with cheat codes in Pokemon games since the original Red and Blue version on the Game Boy. The Masigno glitch was fun to mess around with, but you couldn't mess around with it too much or it would corrupt your save file. Thank goodness that was the case, or I may have fallen out of love with the series permanently. You see, by this time Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire were out. I was a little older, a little wiser. I had an Action Replay, which is this little cheat code device akin to a Game Shark or Game Genie. Basically just this little tool that let you mod your non-PC games. And I found out that you could mod whatever Pokemon you wanted into Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. I experimented a little bit by modding a few Pokemon into the game, just to see if it worked, but I stopped after a few because I knew if I kept doing this, the same thing would happen with this game that happened to me with Ragnarok Online. And if this can happen in two of my all-time favorite games, who's to say this couldn't happen in real life? Fortunately, in real life, there aren't any cheat codes. You can't make a private server unless you somehow are able to discover an uncharted island or something. So unless you're a literal Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, I can't imagine ever facing this problem in real life. But they have entire shows dedicated to this concept. It's basically the entire premise of Rick and Morty. Now it's years later, and I can safely say, yeah, I'd still really like Ragnarok Online, and I'm still totally enamored with Pokemon. Lately, I've been playing on the official international Ragnarok Online server about once a week with a small group of friends, and it's been a blast. If you're ever interested in playing, let me know. I'll DM you my username. This is the kind of game that's just perfect to zone out to, slowly grind out some dungeons, and level up your character in, while hanging out with some friends and chatting about whatever comes to mind. Same thing can be said about Pokemon. The main story campaign is usually fun unless they take control away from you for an extended period of time, and then when you finish the story you can always just hang out with your Switch and multitask, get into a few battles, level up a few Pokemon here and there while watching a show in the background or whatever. I pretty much always have a good time playing, but if I could just hack in whatever Pokemon I wanted at any given moment, I'd have no reason to grind out experience points, and consequently no reason to play the game. So remember kids, don't cheat, stay in school, and embrace anti-nihilism and positivity, I guess. Or something. I don't know, it's your life. You can do what you want. Maybe you like cheating in video games. Some cheats can be a lot of fun, like the moon jump in Spyro the Dragon, or the character swapper in Sonic Adventure 2. It's just when you have an automatic win button that it becomes not so fun anymore. For me anyway. If you like cheating, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.